When is there an ability to grasp mentally or intellectually? When something has edges. It could be spiritual or conceptual edges, but it's something that can be grasped, has to have limits. We are talking about Or Ein Sof, godliness in its unlimited form. Good evening. Tonight we are at the eve of the Tov of Adar Sheini, Yud Zayin Adar Sheini, and we are beginning our spiritual preparations for Pesach by learning a short maimar from our parsha in Likutei Torah, Parashas Tzav, our parsha. I posted it on our chat, and it is page Tesvav Amud Daled. Short maimar, we'll see how much time we need for it, I'm not sure. Let's go right into it. Yamim תאכל, this is about Shvi Shel Pesach, which is called in the Torah, Atzeres La'avai Elokecha. Yamim תאכל מצות, וביום השביעי Atzeres La'avai Elokecha, לא תעשה מלאכה. It's in Re'eh. Yamim, 6 days, you should eat matzos, and on the 7th day, Atzeres should be Atzeres to Hashem Elokecha, your God, Lo ta'aseh melacha, you shouldn't do any work. So this pasuk needs to be understood, because in all other places in the Torah, in which the tzivui on Chag HaMatzos, the Pesach, is explicit before us, that we learn in the Torah that we eat matzos 7 days. 7 days of Pesach, we eat matzos. And here, what it says here, as akdama to the isur of the melacha on Shvi Shel Pesach, that achilas matzos is 6 yamim. 6 days you should eat matzos, and not on Atzeres, which is on the 7th day. So what's going on? We are eating matzos 7 days. Don't you eat matzos? Don't we eat matzos on Shvi Shel Pesach? So what does it mean that the pasuk says, 6 yamim, 6 days you should eat matzos, and on the 7th day, no, it's Atzeres LaHashem Elokecha. Hine matzinu. It's clear, right? The question, I hope it's clear. If not, please don't hesitate to ask. הנה מצינו ששלושה ימים טובים נקראים עצרס. Regarding the word עצרס, 3 ימים טובים are called עצרס. חג השבועות is called עצרס, זמן מתן תורה. ושמיני עצרס, שמיני עצרס is called עצרס, זמן שמחת תורה. So one is man matan Torah, that's Shavuos, it's called Atzeres. Shmini Atzeres, the 8th, which is called Atzeres, which is Simchas Torah. And then we have Shvi Shel Pesach, also called Atzeres. וגדול מה שנאמר בשבי של פסח יותר ממה שנאמר בכולן. And what it says about Shvi Shel Pesach is greater than what it says in all other Yamim Tovim. שנאמר בו להווי אלוקיך ולא לכם, כי בשאר ימים טובים, שיש בהם חציו להווי וחציו לכם, כי אם כולו להווי. Regarding Shvi Shel Pesach, that Atzeres, the Torah says, להווי אלוקיך. In other Yamim Tovim, he said, Atzeres תהיה לכם, to you. You should stop from doing work and so on, and dedicate the day to Hashem, but Atzeres תהיה לכם, to you. Here it says, Atzeres להווי אלוקיך, which means, in other Yamim Tovim, it's לכם, part of it is לכם, half לכם, for our enjoyment, and half for Shamayim, for Hashem. And that means that part of the Yontif, we daven, we learn, and so on, and we do La Hashem, and half of the Yontif we do lachem, we eat and we enjoy each other and so on. Here we have kolo להווי, עצרת תהיה להווי אלוקיך. So the Rebbe says to understand why on the seventh day we don't eat matzos, according to this pasuk. ימים תאכל מצות. First we have to understand עצרת, להווי אלוקיך. That he doesn't say that in other ימים טובים. עצרת, להווי אלוקיך. The לשון עצרת also is brought on the last day of Sukkot. עצרת תהיה לכם, and חג השבועות, עצרת, as we said. From the fact that from this pasuk we learn, and it says explicitly, להווי אלוקיך, Chazal learned that Shvi shel Pesach, there is an aspect which is only LaHashem, and doesn't have achila ushsiya, doesn't have eating and drinking. And it will be explained by the Rebbe, by the Alter Rebbe, that it's true, that really Shvi shel Pesach is alluding to the Shvi shel Pesach le'asid lavoy, Shvi shel Pesach in the Geula, then there will be no achila and shsiya. There will be no eating and drinking on Shvi shel Pesach. So to understand the aspect of Shvi shel Pesach, which is Atzeres la'avai Elokecha, versus other Yamim Tovim, which is also Atzeres lachem, the Rebbe first explains the inyan of Kriyas Yam Suf on Shvi shel Pesach. So the special Vehu Yom Kriyas Yam Suf, as the Rebbe says. This is the day Shvi shel Pesach. The special inyan of the day of Shvi shel Pesach, the 7th of Pesach, is that on that day was Kriyas Yam Suf, the splitting of the Red Sea. And therefore the Kriyas Torah on Shvi shel Pesach is the parsha of Kriyas Yam Suf. So we have to explain what it says in the pasuk Atzeres la'avai Elokecha, that is talking about Shvi shel Pesach le'asid lavo. That's the direction of this Maimer. They're talking about the Shvi shel Pesach in the future to come, in the Geula, and especially Tchias HaMeisim, that will not have Achila Ushsiya. So what it means that there will be an aspect of Kriyas Yam Suf that will be greater than Kriyas Yam Suf that happened by Yetzias Mitzrayim, when we came out of Egypt. And to remember that there will be another splitting of the Yam, of water. At the Geula, we have Shvi shel Pesach to remind us. And Machmat, because of this Gilui la'asid lavo, Shvi shel Pesach, in terms of Kriyas Yam Suf, and the Kriyas Yam Suf that will happen then, will be Atzeres le'avai Elokecha, will be totally to God. And in order to understand it, the Rebbe first explains the spiritual meaning of the first Kriyas Yam Suf when we came out of Mitzrayim. וגדולה הייתה ביזס הים חולו, שהוא עניין העלס ניצוצין חולו. Kriyas Yam Suf was the completion and the end of Yetzias Mitzrayim. Regarding Yetzias Mitzrayim, it says, Vayenatzlu et Mitzrayim. And Chazal say that Vayenatzlu, it's like they used Mitzrayim as a metzula she'en badagim, which means that they used Mitzrayim, they treated Mitzrayim like throwing net into the water and taking all the fish out of the water, nothing is left. And now the net is empty, that all the fish was taken away. And so too when the Am Yisrael, when the Yidden, when Bnei Yisrael came out of Mitzrayim with all the clay kesef and clay zav, all the dishes and all the golden and the silver dishes that they brought from the Mitzrayim, they really, what they did spiritually, they emptied Egypt from its spiritual sparks, from its divine sparks. That's בפנימיוס העניינים. ביאור ניצוצוס הקדושה. This is the elevation of the sparks of holiness. Because when they ascended and came out from Mitzrayim, they took with them and elevated with them all ניצוצוס הקדושה, that nothing was left there. Now it says in שיר השירים, in פרק א', פסוק י"א, תאורי זהב נעשה לך עם נקודות כסף. So I will make you lines of gold with silver dots, describing the necklace, the jewelry. And Chazal explained that these are all spiritual inyanim that are really alluding to the different kinds of nitzutzos, of sparks that were elevated coming out of Mitzrayim. And Chazal say that compare that just as zahav, as gold, is so greater than silver, so too bizas hayam, the body of Yam Suf, was so much greater, the spiritual body, the nitzutzos of Yam Suf was so much greater than bizas Mitzrayim, than the body of Mitzrayim, like the difference between gold and silver. And this indicates on the divine revelation that shines every Shvi'ah shel Pesach, every 7th of Pesach, Yom Kriyas Yam Suf, the day that all the halas hanitzutzos, the elevating of the sparks from that heavy galus of Mitzrayim is completed to the last and furthest sparks from the light of Hashem, that even those would be brought back to their source. And these galus of this aspect of halas hanitzutzim, b'shvi shel Pesach, when that elevation, refinement, elevation of all the sparks is really what is behind all the experience of the exile and the exodus from that exile, beruchnius, which means elevating all the sparks that were captured psychologically, spiritually, and physically in Egypt, and the completion of it by the Kriyas Yam Suf, when all these sparks are being elevated, also the Jewish people and the Jewish soul, the collective Jewish soul is elevated with them as well. And as a collective soul that is now sensing and realizing and seeing the presence of Oravai. And we merit to have hakara and hargasha in Hashem, a recognition and feeling in godliness. And in that case, וראתה שפחה על הים חולו, כחם על זרועותיו, כמשל התינוק שאינו יכול לראות למרחוק, והגביאו אביו לראות. It says that בקריאס ים סוף, ראתה שפחה על הים, even the lowest maid, and that means spiritually the lowest level of Yid, the female maid, represented by a female, not versus male, and which is weaker, and a maid, not a mistress. So the lowest spiritual condition she saw more than Yecheskel ben Buzi, Yecheskel Hanavi, the son of Buzi. So they were all elevated, and the mashal that is brought is kachem al zrootav in Hosea, that Hashem picked up the Jewish people in his arms, kemashal hatinok, like a little child she'eno yachol lirot lemerachok, that is so little that he cannot see far, uvehigbio aviv liros, and his father picks him up and enables him to see the whole picture. And so too by the shleimus of bringing up the nitzutzos, which is the aliyah from Yeshus, from feeling separate from the source, from the Or Eloki. Am Yisrael merited the Kriyas Yam Suf and the Gilui of Or Havaya to the extent that they say they could point with their fingers and they said, Zekeli, this is my God. It's like someone who mar'eh be'etzba'o v'omer ze. They could see it so tangibly. And therefore, Ata shivcha al hayam ma shelo ra'u hanevi'im. A maid servant saw what more than that which the greatest prophets didn't see. Because the Klal Yisrael, the whole Jewish nation, was elevated, including the lowest. And this is what it says in the Navi regarding Anoichi, Tirgalti leEphraim, Kachem al Zrosav, that the Gilui Eloki Yisrael at the time of Kriyas Yamsuf was the mashal of a little child that his father bends down and picks him up on his arm so he can see what the father sees. It's a little child. We were still children. We were immature then spiritually. But what the child sees when the father picks him up is really not according to his level. He sees mikoyach ha'av. He sees what the father sees because the father picks him up. And so too, Kol Yisrael, even a Shifcha, saw in Kriyas Yamsuf Gilui that was completely lo be'erkam, not in proportion to their spiritual state, because the inyan of Kriyas Yamsuf was the inyan of elevating the sparks up, and that, so to speak, schleps up with him, or with it, the entire Jewish collective soul. And this is the inyan primi of Kriyas Yamsuf. What is Yam? Yam is the masach, it's like this, the mechitza, the partition, the curtain that covers over the Or Eloki, like the Yam, the ocean that covers with its waters everything that is on the earth under it. And because of that reason, that just the Yam covers up over the Nivraim, so too this Yam, which is really Malchus of Atzilus, covers up and blocks between the created beings and their source in Atzilus. And therefore the Nivraim now are experiencing themselves and their reality as separate from Elokus, separate from divinity, and they don't feel the light. But on Shvi Shel Pesach, this curtain opens up, and Yisrael are passing through Lemala Me'ayam that blocks, and then Kvod Hashem and the glory and the light of Hashem is revealed. And this was the Gilui Eloki that was in Kriyas Yamsuf. And now the Rebbe will continue and explain that in Giluim La'asid Lavo, there is a inyan which is similar to the Kriyas Yamsuf, but way higher. And basically the Rebbe will explain that, as it says in Shira Sayam, Ad Yavor Amcha Havaye, Ad Yavor Amzu Kanisa. That it says Pa'amayim Ad Yavor, until your nation will go through the water. So there were twice. And spiritually, the two of them is one is crossing this curtain between Biyah and Atzilus, going through Malchus as a block to Malchus as part of Atzilus, and therefore connecting with the light of Atzilus. It's like when a person has an idea in his mind, and the person wants to give this idea over. What does he have to do? He has to speak. He has to take his idea or his feeling in his heart, whether it is a midah or it's teichel, an idea. And now he has to put it in words and say it b'dibur. So when you are hearing the person speaking, now you are not seeing the midah of the person anymore. You don't see the person's love or you don't see the person's mind, and you don't see the person's seichel. All you hear is the oisios hadibur. All you hear is the letters of speech. And And therefore, now you are getting an idea of what the person thinks and what the person feels by analyzing this oisios adibur, the letters that you hear from what the person speaks and says. It's an indirect kind of experience. Crossing Yam Suf the first time was crossing that curtain and not seeing Hashem's presence through his letters, through his dibur, rather seeing his Atzilus straight without the block of Malchus, rather seeing Atzilus, seeing Elokus in the direct way, like seeing the Midas and the divine Hasaga, the divine understanding in a straight way, not through letters. It's as if you can see directly what is in someone's heart or what is in someone's mind, not through the dibur, not through the letters of his speech. Then there will be another Ad Yavor. There will be the crossing of the water of the river by the Geula. And that will be even higher than that. That will transcend anything which is connected with Hasaga v'Havana, with understanding and grasping. Because any understanding and any grasping will have a problem, that it is always subjected to the limitation of the created beings. And therefore you need to cross another block. And that's between Bina and Chokhmah, as we will learn. So now the Rebbe will explain how in the Giluim of the future to come, there is an inyan which is similar to Kriyas Yam Suf, but higher. Vehi neksiv. It says in Beshalach, in Shiras Hayam, Ad Yavor Chulu, Ad Yavor Chulu, Ad Yavor Amcha Havaye, Ad Yavor Am Zu Kanisa. Beis Pa'amim. 2 times it says Ad Yavor, until you people will cross the water. Beshiras Hayam it says Ad Yavor. And these are hinting to the 2 aspects of crossing these curtains. One that took place in Yetzias Mitzrayim, Yam Suf, and then another crossing that we cannot even cross in a regular Shvi Shel Pesach, that will be in the future to come. Vehine la'asid ksiv. Regarding the future, it says, Vehinif yado al hanahar, be'ayam rucho, in the famous Perek in Yeshayahu, which is chapter Yud Aleph, Pasuk Tesvav, which is the Haftarah of Achon Shel Pesach. It says, Vehinif yado al hanahar, be'ayam rucho, that Hashem will raise his hand over the river with the might of his spirit, vehikahu leshiv'a nechalim, and he will strike it into 7 rivers, vehidrich b'ne'alim, and he will guide their steps through these shiv'a nechalim. Ne'alim. Nechalim. 7 rivers. Excuse me for a second. All right. Uksiv basrei, and then it says in Yeshayahu, Odcha Hashem ki anafta bi, yashuv abcha usenachameni. So right after this, in Perek Yud Beis, Pasuk Aleph, in the Hemshech Haftarah, it says, Odcha Hashem ki anafta bi, I will thank you, Hashem, that you were punitive, that you punished me, you were angry at me. Yashuv apcha, your anger will retreat, usenachameni, and you will console me. So this inyan of Ad Yavor, 2 times to cross over, Shtei Pa'amim, La'asid Lavo, is found in all the ksuvim in the many ksuvim of the Nevuos regarding the future to come. וכסיב, and it says in Micha, the Navi Micha, כי ימי צאתך מארץ מצרים, אראנו נפלאות. That just as the days when you came from Eretz Mitzrayim, from the land of Mitzrayim, I will show you wonders. But it's just as, which means the Giluim, there will be Giluim la'asid lavo, that will be similar to the Giluim of Mitzrayim, of the Yetzias Mitzrayim, but they will be way greater. In comparison to Nisim of Yetzias Mitzrayim, the miracles of the future Geula will be way, way greater. Now the Rebbe will compare between the two Ya'avor, between the Kriyas Yam Suf in Yetzias Mitzrayim and Ha'avaras HaNahar, and crossing through the river in the future to come. דהיינו, כמו שעברו בני ישראל בעלוסם ממצרים, es mei Yam Suf, just as the Jewish people, when they ascended from Mitzrayim, they crossed the waters of Yam Suf, shehu b'chinas soifa de chol dargin. What is Yam Suf? The Yam of Sof. Suf is Sof, means the end. What's the end? The end of all spheres is Malchus. They crossed the Yam of Sof, of Malchus. So when they came up from Mitzrayim, they crossed Midas HaMalchus, the Sof of all Madregos in the holy spheres of Atzilus. And this Midas HaMalchus covers up over the spheres, the Moichin and the Midas of the Moichin and the Moichin that are higher than it. Like a Melech. A Melech cannot be a king over people that are close to him. The subjects have to be separate from him. And so too Malchus creates a separation between the divine life source and the Nivraim. But in Kriyas Yam Suf, this Yam of Midas HaMalchus, Yam represents covering up and concealing, was opened up, and Israel, their consciousness, and with their consciousness, Avru, they passed through the Yam. It means that they exited their Metzias, their way of being, of a Yesh, like an existence separate from its source, that doesn't grasp, it doesn't realize its source, and they were brought up to a level which is higher than this concealment, and then ראתה שפחה על הים, מה שלא ראו כל הנביאים. And then even a maidservant saw what all the greatest Nevi'im later on didn't see. And this is like the mashal that we gave. That, you know, like when it says, Chazal say, that Tavni deliba lokis ve'inche. That a feeling that you have in Pnimius Halev, you cannot put in words. When you describe something, when you have a feeling, when you have something which is core of your heart, you can't put the certain things, the depth of your feelings and your ideas that you could say, I cannot put it in words, it's beyond words. The Pnimius. So words reveal, but also words block. And by Kriyas Yam Suf, the Dibur of Malchus was broken through, and now they had a Gilui form, the Midas and the Moichin of Atzilus. כן לעתיד לבוא, יעברו את הנהר, so too in the future to come. They will cross the river, להיות בבחינת עבר הנהר, and they will reach the level of עבר הנהר. They will reach the other side of the river. As it says in Bereshis, and also in Yoshua it says, בעבר הנהר ישבו אבותיכם מעולם. That's actually from Yoshua, Chav Dalet Beis. בעבר הנהר, like Avram HaIvri. Avram was called Ivri because he came from the other side of the river. בעבר הנהר, on the other side of the river in Ur Kasdim, ישבו אבותיכם מעולם. Your forefathers were settled from the old days. So from the old days, your forefathers were settled, were residing be'ever hanahar, on the other side of the river. And that means that in the future to come, לעתיד לבוא, there will be העברת ועליית ישראל למעלה from this nahar, this masach ma'alim, which means this blocking curtain, which is similar to Kriyas Yamsuf. But it will be on a way, way higher level. And the inyan of crossing the nahar, why he brings the pasuk of Yoshua be'ever hanahar yashvu avosechem me'olam, don't we know that? Don't we know that? What's the big deal that Yeshua has to make this big statement? From where Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov are coming. And in the Zohar, he explains that when the Navi says that, he really states a great thing. He lets them know that be'ever hanahar yashvu avosechem me'olam, that means your root, your shoresh, it is higher than the nahar hayotze me'eden. In Bereshis, there is a description of a river of Gan Eden and the Garden of Eden, and there is a nahar that comes out of Eden, le'ashkos et hagan, to water the garden. So there is Eden, then there is a river that comes out of Eden, and then there is Gan Eden. In other words, there is Chokhmah, which is called Eden. Then there is Bina. Eden is Chokhmah, Eden. Eden means Tainug. Adin means very refined. And also Tainug, which means in Chokhmah, because Chokhmah is the power of Bitul, in Chokhmah shines Or Ein Sof, and therefore in Chokhmah shines the Tainug Eloki, the divine pure pleasure and delight. That's Eden. And then there is Nahar that comes out of Eden. No eye had seen Eden. Only Elokim. No eye had seen Eden. Then there is a Nahar that comes out of Eden, and that Nahar waters the garden. And Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve were in the garden. So we have Eden, which is Chokhmah. Then we have the Nahar Hayotze Eden, the Nahar, the river that comes out of Eden, that's Bina. And then we have the garden, which is Malchus. So be'ever hanahar yashvu avosechem. Your avos, that nurture, that from where your roots, from where you come from ever hanahar. A Jewish soul comes from Chokhmah, from Eden, from the other side of the river, beyond Hasaga. The river represents Bina, the ability to grasp. When there is ability to grasp, when is there an ability to grasp? When there are edges that you can hold, then you grasp. So too mentally, when is there an ability to grasp mentally or intellectually? When something has edges, it could be spiritual or conceptual edges, but it's something that can be grasped, has to have limits. We are talking about Or Ein Sof, godliness in its unlimited form. That's where Avosechem resided, be'ever hanahar. Our source comes beyond sechel, beyond intellect, beyond moichin. It comes from the Ein Sof, from Chokhmah, where Elokus itself can be revealed directly, not through Hasaga. Because sechel and understanding and grasping is also not a direct experience of Elokus. It's only through Chokhmah that you can actually see Elokus rather than figuring it out mentally in a manner of shmiya, of hearing. So, ken la'asid lavo ya'avru es hanahar, in the future to to come, they will cross the Nahar, להיות בבחינת עבר הנהר, and we will have the consciousness of עבר הנהר, the other side of the river, which means the other side of Chokhmah, where Chokhmah actually connects to, the other side of Bina that connects to Chokhmah, כמו שכתוב בעבר הנהר ישבו אפוסיכם מעולם. So the shorish of Neshamas Israel is in the Chokhmah of Hashem, which is higher than Bina. So the Ha'avaras Hayam, the first crossing of the Yam, of Yam Suf, is crossing that Yam that blocks completely of Nasagas Elokus. The first stage of the Red Sea, by Yetzias Mitzrayim, is the first crossing, the first blockage that completely conceals on the ability to understand anything about Elokus and to grasp anything. To have Elokus, understood mentally and consciously in our seichel. And that's the first crossing. But now, in the future to come, there will be another crossing beyond seichel and intellect, beyond Hasagas Elokus. First, we want to get to Hasagas Elokus. That's the Kriyas Yamsuf. When there is some kind of Hasagas Elokus, and we have some kind of a more intimate understanding of godliness, and then we have the total seeing of godliness, and that is in the future crossing of the river. Vehu hanahar hayotze mi'Eden. The inyan of the Nahar, the river that comes out of Eden, that the Yidden will cross in the future to come. As we said, Eden is the Etzem HaTainug, the essence of the divine Tainug, which is the way it is in Hashem himself, higher than the ability of any creations to understand. And even the Tainug in Gan Eden, we have now the neshamas go after this world. Where do they go? They go to Gan Eden, right? Gan Eden is how the neshamas having pleasure from understanding. What do they understand? Ha'ara, the Nahar hayotze mi'Eden. They understand some of the radiance of the river that comes out of Eden. So the enjoyment and the pleasure of the neshamos in Gan Eden, in the Garden of Eden, it's only as much pleasure as one can get from understanding. It's a lot of pleasure. When you don't understand, it's painful. But when you do understand and everything is clear and known and understood and makes sense, it's very pleasurable. And especially when you talk about Elokus. So the neshamos are having a lot of pleasure in Gan Eden. But all this is just on the realm of understanding. Getting higher than that is getting beyond understanding. Understanding is like hearing, figuring out. You see prat by prat. You don't see the whole picture at once. You hear prat by prat. When it's bina, when it's understanding, rather than chokhmah, seeing, bina is like hearing. When you hear, you don't hear the whole picture right at once. You hear part by part, another detail and another detail and another detail, until you put them all together and you figure out how the whole picture looks as a whole. In Re'iyah, you instantly see the whole picture. In seeing, in Chokhmah, you instantly see the whole picture. It's a different experience. וידוע שעדן הוא בחינת חוכמה. Eden is the aspect of Chokhmah, ואיזה הוא חכם הרועס הנולד. Who is a Chacham? Who is Chokhmah? Who is the consciousness of Chokhmah? The one that can see how things are born. בבחינת ראייה. How he sees creation in a manner and how everything is coming out of into existence, out of Ayin, from Ayin to Yesh, and how a Chacham can see it b'vchinas Re'iyah. So a Chacham can see Elokus as a direct experience, not like hearing, rather like seeing. ונהר היוצא מעדן הוא בבחינת בינה. But a river that comes out of Eden, that's only Bina, it's not Chokhmah. Bina שהוא בחינת שמיעה. Bina is like hearing, והבנה and understanding בהסבוננוס בגדולתו יתברך. When we reflect and think and analyze and deep think about the Gdula, the greatness of Hashem. So the chiluk, the difference between Chokhmah, which is the Tainug itself, and between a descent of an Ara from Chokhmah to the Hasaga in Bina, is a tremendous difference. And especially when you're talking about Or Ein Sof. Because Or Ein Sof is Ein Sof. And therefore, we said before that grasping you can only do when you have something has edges. Then you can grasp it. And so too mentally. You can only grasp something that has edges, that has a certain definition. Otherwise, you cannot grasp it. It doesn't have any definition. You cannot grasp it. So like just as begashmius, you can't grasp a table if the table is so long, it's Ein Sof, it's so long and so wide that you can't reach its edges. Its edges are way, 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 way beyond you. You can't grasp. And so too, when you talk about Or Ein Sof is Ein Sof. And therefore, he doesn't have any edges. It's Ein Sof, you can't grasp. So Seichel is not a keli to grasp Or Ein Sof. Leis machashav atfisa beiklal. There's no thought that can grasp him. And therefore, it's only through Chokhmah, and therefore Bina has no chance regarding Or Ein Sof. Only Chokhmah that can see and goes beyond the analytical function of Bina, Chokhmah can actually experience Or Ein Sof directly. והנה ים סוף נגזר ליוד בייס גזרים. So now the Rebbe will continue and explain that in Kriyas Yam Suf, we didn't manage to get to Chokhmah, only to Bina, and in the future to come, we will get to Ever HaNahar. והנה ים סוף נגזר ליוד בייס גזרים, למניין שבטי בני ישראל. Yam Suf was divided to 12 parts, Keneged, corresponding to the number of the tribes of Israel, 12 tribes, 12 parts. כדכסיב, לגוזר ים סוף לגזרים, כי לעולם חסדו. Like we say in Tehillim, Kuf Lamed Vav, and we say in davening, לגוזר ים סוף לגזרים, we are praising the one who cuts Yam Suf to pieces, so to speak, כי לעולם חסדו, because his chesed is eternal. בכדי שכל שבט ושבט במסילתו ייכון. In order for each and every shevet to be established in his own route, in his own mesilah, in his own path. כל אחד לפום שיעורי דילי. Each one according to his level. So why there were 12 gzarim? Because there were 12 shvatim. That means there were 12 types or levels or types of consciousness. And since what was opened up, what block was penetrated and gone through and broken up at Yam Suf, the block between the dibur, between not being at all directly connected with the Elokus, to the ability to have a saga in Elokus, to the ability to reach Bina, to have understanding in Elokus. And therefore, the water Yam Suf was split to 12 parts. Why? Because in understandings, there are levels. In understanding, there are levels. And there are all kinds and types of understandings, each one according to his measure and his level. And therefore the Yam Suf was split to 12 parts, because each Shevet had his own hasaga in Elokus, his own understanding of Elokus, his own grasp in Elokus, according to his nature and his level. However, ula'asid ksiv, what will be in the future? Vehikahu lezayin nechalim. Hashem will split the river to 7 rivers. Keneged bchinat zayin roim, corresponding to the 7 shepherds, leaders, that nurture the Jewish people with the Elokus by inheritance, in a hereditary way, spiritually, which are the Gimel Avos, Vedaled Imaros, the 3 fathers and the 4 mothers. They are our spiritual source, and they be'ever hanahar yashvu abosechem. Our forefathers, the mothers and fathers, they originate be'ever hanahar. They originate in Chokhmah, and therefore they are called shepherds, because they can nurture us with Elokus, with divinity, because Chokhmah is the kli to Elokus. והנה עתה בזמן דעכשיו לא נסגלה בחינס עבר הנהר הנ"ל. Now in our time, עבר הנהר, beyond the river, is not revealed yet, אבל לעתיד לבוא כסיב הראינו נפלאות. But in the future to come it says, I will show him wonders. הראינו, בחינס ראייה. It will be like seeing, chokhmah. So now, a time after, even the time of Kriyas Yam Suf, we only have a gilui from Hashem in a manner of asaga and isboinenus, sichlis, intellectually. And therefore, our grasp is only a limited ha'ara, a radiance from the light of Hashem, and we don't experience etzem tainug, divine tainug itself. And each one grasps according to his level. However, in the future to come, we will all come to the level of re'iyah, of seeing, which is higher than hearing, ar'enu niflaos. We will all reach the aspect of chokhmah, in which etzem tainug, the pure divine delight, is higher than hasaga and havana, higher than understanding, is revealed. And therefore, there will be in the future to come this gailus of the Tainug Elyon, the revelation of the divine Tainug, not through the Nahar, not through Bina, rather directly. Vezeu odcha Hashem ki anafta bi. And this is what it means. I will thank you for punishing me. Dahainu yisurim koshi ashiabud parnasa, the suffering of the hardships of the slavery to parnasa, to pursuing sustenance, and the slavery to sustenance, and how much it takes our koiches and how much it distracts us and consumes us and so on. V'lachen yashuv apcha utenachameni, in all the difficulties of this galus, at the end of those, your anger will retreat, and you will console me. Shal yedei shesavalnu ha'oni ba'dochak, through the pain of galus and the poverty, nizke libchinas is galus bchinas be'ever hanahar kanal. Through the pain and the suffering of galus, we will zoche to the aspect of this galus of ever hanahar, beyond the river. Vezeu, and now we are discussing and ending with Shvi shel Pesach la'asid lavo. Vezeu sheshet yamim tochal matzos. And this is why it says in the pasuk, 6 days you should eat matzos velo zayin yamim, and not 7 days. Why? Ki hapasuk hazeh ne'emar la'asid. Because this pasuk relates to the future to come. Sheyom hazayin, the 7th day, the future to come, Shvi shel Pesach, yeh atzeres la'ava elokecha, will be atzeres to Hashem your God, b'chinas ever hanahar, the aspect of Ever Nahar, of the other side, beyond the river, Hayotze Me'eden, that now we'll get to the other side of the Nahar that comes out of Eden, meaning Eden itself, she'ein bo lo achila velo shtiya chulu. In Eden itself, there is no eating and no drinking. Lachen lo yeh bo achilas matzah lechem oni. Therefore, in the future to come, there will be no eating on Shvi Pesach and not eating of matzah, which is lechem oni. So, the pasuk that we brought, that the Rebbe brought in the beginning of the Maimar, Bayom HaShvi'i Atzeres La'ava Elokecha, instead of Atzeres Tiyeh Lachem, usually it says to you, Atzeres. It should be Yontef to you. Here it says La'ava Elokecha. This relates that while La'ava Elokecha to Hashem, because it relates to Shvi Shel Pesach La'asid Lavo. Shvi Shel Pesach is Kriyas Yam Suf, and the highest Kriya, the highest tearing of the Yam, the second Yavor, is the Kriya, the tearing or the splitting of the Nahar, of the river, that will be in the future to come, that will lead us in our consciousness to Ever Nahar, Etzem Ataynu, which means Eden, which is higher than the ability of the Nivaim to understand with our mind. So now, Shvi Shel Pesach still is lachem. It's lachem, and there is achila ushtia now, because now we are still dealing with hasaga, with bina, and bina is represented by achila. Eating represents the ability to internalize something intellectually, mentally, logically, the ability to understand something. It's like eating. It's like internalizing it, absorbing it, digesting it. You know, when you need to think about something, you say, give me some time to digest it. You know, so it's compared to eating. So now we have eating on Shvi Shel Pesach, and this is indicated by eating matzah, lechem oni, because the asagas elokus, matzah is called lechem oni, a lechem of poverty, because matzah represents hasagas elokus through, in this aspect of matzah at least, through bina. And bina is poverty. It doesn't have the richness of chokhmah. And therefore, as long as we are experiencing elokus through understanding, through bina, it will be lechem oni. It will be internalizing, but it will be poverty because we don't see, we just hear. And it's not a full experience. But in the future to come, Kriyas Yam Suf Shvi Shel Pesach will be the second Ad Yavor, even crossing the Nahar, reaching Eden, and therefore there will not be Achilas Matzah on Shvi Shel Pesach. Only 6 days, Sheshesh Yamim Tochal Matzos. And Yom HaShvi'i of Kriyas Yam Suf in the future, including crossing the Nahar, then will be revealed to Am Yisrael the Oneg HaElyon, the divine tainug and pleasure, the way it is higher than being invested in sechel, in logic. And therefore, it will be higher than eating and drinking, and there will be no need to eat and drink. V'lachen ksiv lo ta'aseh melacha. And therefore, in other Yamim Tovim it says, lo ta'aseh meleches avodah. You shouldn't do work of avodah. That Chazal learned that you can do work for cooking, for ochel tzorech nefesh, for food. But here, regarding Shvi Shel Pesach, it doesn't say lo ta'aseh meleches avodah. It says lo ta'aseh melacha, any work. Dichtiv kedichtiv v'sh'ar yamim tovim. It says meleches avodah. Shehutra bahem ochel nefesh. In other Yamim Tovim, you're allowed to do work, melacha, letzorech ochel nefesh, for preparing food. Aval beyom hazayin anal, but on the 7th day in the future to come, la'asid lavo, lo ta'aseh melacha stam. It says not to do work stam, not melechet avodah, just not to do work at all. Afilu meleches ochel nefesh nabi b'mashma. Even meleches ochel nefesh, you will not even have you will not cook even. לפי שאין בו לא אכילה וכולו כנ"ל, because it will not have no eating and no drinking. And therefore it says regarding this עצרת, לא תעשה מלאכה, just any מלאכה. והנה הגם שבלילות הראשונות של פסח נתגלה, now we are ending. Even though on the first nights of Pesach, נתגלה בחינס מויכין דגדלוס כידוע. So what happened in the first days of Pesach? All this is 7 days of Pesach. So we have until the future to come, Kriyas Yamsuf, from not understanding anything to the ability to grasp and understand Elokus, fine. Then the future to come will be beyond understanding, seeing Elokus. What happened on the first day of Pesach? First days. והנה הגם wasn't there a גילוי אלוקי? There was a great גילוי אלוקוס on the first night of Pesach, in the first day of Pesach. הנה הגם שבלילות הראשונות של פסח נסגלה בחינס מויכין דגדלוס. So now the Rebbe will explain what's the chidush of Shvi של פסח over the first night of Pesach, in which נגלה למלך מלכי המלכים, as we say in the Haggadah. הקדוש ברוך הוא himself, בכבודו ובעצמו. So what's the difference? הנה, גם שבלילות הראשונות של פסח נתגלה בחינס מויכין דגדלוס כידוע, even though the first nights of Pesach, what was revealed was the aspect of moichin דגדלוס, moichin of greatness, moichin that are inspired by אור אינסוף. רק שזה היה לפי שעה. There was a גילוי אור אינסוף in the consciousness of the Jewish people, to some extent on the first night of Pesach. A tremendous גילוי מלמעלה. But זה היה לפי שעה. It was temporary. בבחינת דילוג שלא כדרך הטבע. It's like דילוג, like skipping their condition. It wasn't in an organic way, wasn't in a natural way. The Arizal explains the Maila of Leila Seder, which we receive moichin de gadlus. That means that we receive the light of Hashem the way it is, not the way we are. It's not mitzumtzam. Katnus HaMoichin means that Hashem adjusts and constricts his light to our ability to perceive. Gadlus HaMoichin means that we ability to perceive godliness on Hashem's terms. Why? Because there is Aliyas HaNivraim. The Nivraim are ascended, are brought up to a higher level. But it comes in a manner that is not organic. When it came there as a gilui on Pesach, it's a gilui milemala that doesn't really, that really inspires the person and overwhelms the person and uplifts the person. However, it is not absorbed because it's not integrated yet. And therefore, there has to be a gradual process of integration. So the first Yontif of Pesach, there is no such elevation as the last Yontif of Pesach. ולכן צריך לומר ספירס העומר אחר בחינת הסגלוס הנ"ל. And therefore, because it's a light that comes in Lamaila, without any organic preparation from below, organic, how shall I say, proportion between the condition from below and the Gilui Milamaila, we need, צריך לומר ספירס העומר. We need to count the Omer, אחר בחינת הסגלוס הנ"ל. After the revelation on the first day of Pesach, היום יום אחד, so the second day of Pesach, we begin to count. Today is one day to the Omer, and then the second day of the Omer, היינו כדי להמשיך במעט מעט הרגשנו. To bring down that infinite light, step by step, to be integrated, and מעט מעט הרגשנו, by driving out the ungodly aspects and clearing our midos. ולמשל כמו אחד, and here is the mashal that helps us to understand what is the dynamic between the divine revelation of the first Yontif of Pesach and then Sfiras HaOmer and the result of that. And the metaphor is, למשל כמו אחד שנתן מתנה לחברו, כיס מלא זהובים, It's like a metaphor of someone who gave his friend that he loves very much a whole sack or a whole packet of golden coins. שמתחילה מקבל המתנה בפעם אחת בכלל. How does the receiver receive it? At first, he received the whole gift at once, the whole packet of all the golden coins. He gets it and he takes it to his hands. פעם אחת בכלל, generally. ואחר זה הוא סופר ומונה הזהובים מעט מעט בפרט. And following that, after he received the whole sack of golden coins, he sits down, he opens the sack, and he's counting each one by one, each golden coin, step by step. And since the Hamshacha, the first nights of Pesach, is in a manner of dilug, of skipping milamayla, without preparation and readiness of the lower Nivraim, therefore, right after the first day of Pesach, we are commanded to begin Sfiras HaOmer, which means to begin to refine the midos of Nefesh HaBahamis. And through this, the light that first comes down in a manner of dilug, not in relation to our condition, now it becomes more internalized, bepnimius, through the days of Sfira, and every day it refines another of the 49 midos. And this is what we have in mind each and every day of the days of Sfira, to count one Sfira from Chesed Shebechesed all the way to Malchus Shebemalchus. And through Sfiras HaOmer, this Hamshacha Milamayla is not temporary anymore, and is not passing, and is not disregarding the Teva of the Nivraim. Rather, now it becomes internalized and integrated. And a person becomes a keli to completely be transformed.